Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
Matt Lombardo joins us. Matt, welcome. Great to have you with us.
Steve, great to be here. But I will say Ricky Ricardo is a good friend, but also a tough act to follow. What a call that was.
Isn't he? He's spectacular, whether it's the Eagles or the Yankees. He's first class all the way. 4 NFL players are suspended, 3 indefinitely, and then Nicholas Petit-Frere from Tennessee did not gamble in the NFL, but evidently must have done it somewhere around the workplace or on the road or whatever. The rules to me are black and white, and I know they're posted everywhere, Matt. Is this just the NFL just trying, that these guys are A, doing it, but B, they've got to make examples, and they're doing it?
Yes, Steve, I'm not sure that the rules are as black and white as you and I might presume them to be. Obviously, it seems like it would be common sense not to bet on your own games or bet on NFL games, but players are allowed to gamble on casino games online or playing cards or whatever. I think what surprises me most is that players not only are betting on NFL games, but you see the bets that Isaiah Rodgers has placed. A lot of these were for $25, $50 parlays, $1,000 prop bets. Really insignificant amounts of money when you talk about the grand scheme of things and what they're risking by placing these bets. And I'm also surprised that agents haven't been more aggressive in terms of telling their players, listen, yes, it sounds hypocritical for the NFL to be, flooding the airwaves every commercial break with multiple commercials for their sportsbook partners and this, that, and the other thing. But you cannot, and I can't stress this enough, not bet on football. The fact that those things are happening, I think are what surprises me the most about this storyline.
Because it's interesting. You talk about the amount of the bets, which is interesting. I was saying that, Matt, to my class, when I've asked them about, and I said, look, you don't want to participate, don't participate. How many of you gamble? These are college students. Usually 2/3 of the hands go up. So just out of curiosity, I said, how much do you bet? And some of them are betting between 200 and 1,000. And, Matt, I'm completely taken aback.
Yeah, you and I both, because you talk about a college student who, might be trying to scrounge up beer money for the weekend. $200 to $1,000 on sports bets is a pretty hefty amount of money. I just find it very fascinating that when you think about NFL players, who even if you're on a veteran minimum contract, you're probably making $650,000 or more. Not to mention guys that have been in the league with tenure making multi-million dollars. It's just shocking and surprising to me that they would be risking that, placing a $25 or a $50 or $100 bet. But it also, I think, goes to show you the competitive nature for some of these guys, that they might not be chasing the dollar amount. They might be chasing the feeling of winning, which they get on Sundays. But certainly this is another way to chase that high, so to speak, by placing bets on games. But I am really surprised that it wouldn't be common sense to players as much as it is for you and I not to be betting on NFL games, let alone their own teams during the season.
The one that strikes me, though, if I have a problem with the NFL rule, it's that you're not allowed to place, like you're sitting in the locker room or somewhere in the facility and, oh, by the way, you know what, I'm going to put some money on the NBA game tonight. Maybe make a prop bet on what LeBron might score, whatever. Right? And because you're in the facility, you can't do it. And that part makes no sense because in Major League Baseball, the NHL, and the NBA, you can.
Yeah, no, I agree there. And I'm also surprised at how much that's happening around the NFL, because as somebody who's covered the league for years and who's been in multiple team facilities, it used to be, now this might have changed over the last 2 or 3 seasons, but even sites like Vegas Insider or any sort of fantasy sports section of ESPN or Yahoo Sports, any site that's tangentially linked to gambling, was blocked on Wi-Fi in the facility. So whether it's players just flipping the Wi-Fi off their phone and going over cellular networks to place these bets, I'm just surprised that it's happening as frequently as it is. But I agree with you. If sports betting is legal in your state and you're betting on the NBA or betting on college football or betting on Major League Baseball, I don't know that that's a suspendable offense. But I do understand to a degree the NFL trying to root out gambling within the locker room and root out the culture so that it doesn't become a situation where a guy's betting on NBA games and all of a sudden slides into betting on NFL games. But definitely a situation where the NFL, as you said at the top of the conversation, I think they need to make an example of these guys to prevent it from becoming a stronger part of the culture within the league.
Well, so far the key to me is no big names have been suspended. I mean, that's the big part to me. I mean, Jameson Williams is still not a big name in the league, and he got suspended for 6 games. But there are no big names that have been suspended. This is not Paul Hornung, Alex Karras. They were big names when they were suspended.
Right. I don't know Calvin Ridley from a year ago, though, being suspended for a full year. There's a guy who's a 1,000-yard receiver, was one of the faces of the Atlanta Falcons.
But he wasn't playing at the time.
True. Very true. Very true. But still, he's a big name, and I think that maybe having these big suspensions come down might be a step in the league, cracking down on gambling within the locker room and within the facilities, for sure.
This is an interesting time of the year because this is one of the few times, Matt, where not a lot is going on. The NFL owns the cycle the other 11 months out of the year. So what's this time of the year like for you?
Yeah, Steve, it's funny. People ask me all the time about the off season and my part of the job in this time of year. It's kind of like the rest of the entire league seems to go on vacation, right? Coaches, scouts. This is the time the players get away before training camp starts. So for me, the content still needs to keep flowing. So it's a lot of preview stories, a lot of lists ranking players for the upcoming season. You sneak away when you can. Maybe you sneak off to the golf course to play 9 midway through the afternoon. But it's kind of just like within the league. It's kind of the one chance out of the year from the middle of June until the middle of July when camps open up to kind of just take a breath, recharge, and get ready for the marathon that is training camp through the NFL draft.
Because people will ask me at this time of the year, like, what do you do? And I literally have the schedule. Now, football's easy. Basketball's not out yet. But, I mean, I have it. And, I'll say, hey, look, I'm already prepping for the upcoming season. That way, when I get to the week of games, I've got basics already done. And it helps me, it makes the work week go quicker for me in a lot of ways because I already took care of the basics. So you have to do all that preview stuff. So what are a couple of things that have you worked on that that will have some staying power for you when we put it out?
Yeah, I think the one that I really enjoyed, we put it out about a week ago when I left for vacation. Went ahead and I predicted the next first-team All-Pro for every position in the league. The caveat is that these guys couldn't have been first-team All-Pros at any point in their career, but have a good chance of doing so in the upcoming season. So that was a lot of fun to put together. And then coming up in the next couple of weeks here, we're going to be releasing our top 5 players across the league by position. Those are always a lot of fun, especially when we talk about the quarterbacks and the running backs and the wide receivers, the sexy skill positions that people really care about. A good chance to spark some debate, maybe stir up some controversy with some of the selections. But, stories like that certainly are a lot of fun. They fill the calendar, and they have some staying power because it's the type of content that people are looking for all throughout the preseason and the run-up to the regular season getting underway.
How do you view the Saquon Barkley situation right now?
Yeah, you know what, Steve? That's a fascinating one because you talk to people inside the league, and I had an executive tell me that is a contract squabble that's probably going to get done close to training camp. But I do think it's really interesting that when Saquon Barkley came out at his annual youth camp and basically hinted at the idea that he would consider sitting out and holding out the entire season, that within 24 hours, the report surfaced on NFL Network that the Giants had put their original contract offer back on the table. So that felt like Saquon kind of grabbing back some of the leverage in these conversations. But I think that, I wrote about this about 2 weeks ago. You look at what's happening at the running back position. Dalvin Cook, former All-Pro, 1,300-yard rusher a year ago, in the prime of his career, something like 29 years old, just gets released from the Minnesota Vikings. So look at Saquon Barkley, career year with a coaching staff that finally knows how to utilize him and get the most out of him. And he's on the franchise tag, certainly can't get top dollar at his position. And across the league, you look at the spend on running backs, obviously the position is down, but there are 7 teams who have a payroll at the running back position that is at the same level or lower than what they pay their kicker. So I just think it's really fascinating to watch how a position is completely devalued. And if I were Saquon Barkley and if I were his agents, I would do everything I could to get every guaranteed dollar that I can on this contract, because who knows what the future is going to hold on that next deal, if there even is a next deal that comes along 2, 3, 4 years down the line.
So why devalue of running backs? You're talking about it's hard to find 1,000 to 1,500 yards from scrimmage out of anybody. Why the devaluation of running backs, in your personal opinion?
I think, Steve, it comes down a lot to teams are going to the backfield by committee approach, that you need to have 2, maybe 3 running backs who you might not be getting 1,500 yards from scrimmage from one guy and putting one guy through the workload of 25, 30 carries per game, but you might look at a Philadelphia where you have a Boston Scott and a DeAndre Swift and multiple running backs who can get the job done. You look at Dallas, certainly they moved on from Ezekiel Elliott, and they seem comfortable moving forward with Ronald Jones and Tony Pollard once he gets healthy. I think you're going to start continuing to see teams deploy 2, 3 running back committees rather than invest a significant chunk of the cap in one guy who, with all of the history of declining production after the age of 30, after all of the history of injuries at that position, that if you can spread around the workload and the wear and tear and spread around the money, then you're not going to be in a position where you're investing a significant chunk of your cap on one position that might not make the same impact as a quarterback, a cornerback, a wide receiver, or an edge rusher.
Interesting. I mean, do analytics play a role in how teams view running backs?
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of the conversation, Steve, but I think a lot of it just is looking at the career trajectory of future backs. I mean, you look at just taking Saquon Barkley as an example, the multiple high ankle sprains, the torn ACL. Running backs, they just get beat up. And once you get into the life of that second contract and on, there's a pretty significant history of guys' production declining. And I don't know that I necessarily agree with the approach of going to a backfield by committee, but I think that when you're looking at team building, the teams that are most successful are the teams that have dominant offensive and defensive lines, a franchise quarterback, and elite secondary play. I don't think that it's necessary to have that dominant running back as part of your offense if you're a Super Bowl caliber team. And if you can get by investing in 2 or 3 above average running backs rather than paying $10 million to a top 5 running back, I think teams are going to continue down that path and prioritizing those quote-unquote premium positions.
Wow. Interesting. Thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate your time today. Enjoyed it.
Steve, always enjoyed the conversation. Talk to you soon.